In the meantime, organized labor is threatening to hold a 3-day strike and national protest should the government continue to ignore the demands of the workers. They're also warming up for a 1-day protest after its 21-day ultimatum to the government on ASUU strike. The union stated this during its rally ahead of the Mayday celebration in Abuja. For more on this development, we speak with the NLC Deputy President, ASUU. Thank you for joining us on TVC News at 10. From antecedent, how effective would you say strike, industrial actions have been in actually meeting the demands of workers?
Yes, first and foremost, we must acknowledge that industrial strike is also a right to institutions like trade union. It's an instrument that is not invested for purposes of suffering any party. It's unfortunate, but I must say the gains of strike is even actually the freedom we are enjoying today. Starting 5 years back, decades ago, struggles were engaged, and we have seen that nothing good comes easy. And everything we have achieved in the kingdom of labor achievements has to do with strike upon strike. And I will tell you, it took struggle before even the 8 hours work per day was achieved. It took struggle of strike to achieve maternity leave for females that are working in the organizations. Every employer wants to exploit, and they do that with all sense of neglect. So I believe what is happening in the institution, education institution today, where government deliberately decline support for education, basically because almost all the politicians in Nigeria does not have their children in public schools. And therefore, strike means nothing to government. But I think NSC recent decision is to make education a priority to the extent that injury to education will be injury to all sector in Nigeria. And it's not a joke, because this decision was clearly taken. And I must tell you, if government don't do anything urgent to realize and put the right policy to the extent that they don't just respect agreement reached, but they must invest consciously in the education system, such that their children eventually will put trust and rely on public schools. We can't continue like this. None of the parents today,
if I may quickly come in, you have outlined the impact that strike has had. You've mentioned the fact that many of the successes that the labor union has recorded have been achieved through strike. But then the issue of ASUU, if we may put that in perspective, has been known for quite a while. Years have passed. Each time they embark on an industrial action, they suspend it, and then later they return again to strike. So it just also appears that parents and even students are losing trust and confidence in the industrial action. What would you say?
Yes, I agree, and I said it earlier. The industrial action that has always been engaged by ASUU is actually limited to the education sector. And when you are dealing with government that have no interest in education, so the strike of education sector alone does not affect the economy. As far as the government is concerned, they don't even mind that children are spending 7 years in school because of the incessant strike action that is always carried out as a result of inability of government to fulfill their own part in agreement. But I tell you, the system has to change now. I agree that in the past, they have engaged several actions, strike actions, to the extent of running to a year. Imagine a nation that is education sector closed for 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, and they still go to work and come back home. None of their children suffers this.
Well, when you mentioned that,
of shame.
Okay, when you mention that government has no interest in education, well, of course, the Ministry of Education would tell you, that isn't exactly correct, because also you have different sectors calling for attention of the government. You have health, you have, several other sectors there, and government talks about the fact that the economy isn't as buoyant as it used to be, and there isn't enough funds to actually manage these issues that are at hand. As it is now, NLC itself wants to plunge into this, is planning to declare some more strike in support of ASUU and all of that. When do you see all of this being resolved? Because it just seems like something that is never ending.
We are not even seeing government doing anything meaningful until that action is launched. And I must say that we have to consciously trade to the extent that will bring recognition and value to education. Government may have varieties of ministries and other sectors that are calling its attention. But don't forget, we have eminent representation of government in our sector. Budgets are released on an annual basis for purposes of enhancement and to have a quality education. But I tell you, budget so far for education suggests inability, sincerity, and nonchalancy making education to work. We see the money that we borrow. And I must tell you, government has to do the needful in order to arrest the fear of parents and Nigerians. We must have confidence, because where school fees have been increased by private institutions to 500,000 and 1 million, none of the poor, none of the workers' children can attend that kind of level of education.
All right, comrade, I believe you have made your point. Just 2 days to the Workers' Day celebration. Perhaps there would be some positive news to help students return to the four walls of their institutions of learning after this whole industrial action. Amaechi Asukuni is the NLC Deputy President. Thank you for joining us on TVC News at 10.
You're welcome. Thank you.